All right. Hey there. I thought I would do a training today just to shake it up a little bit. I spend a lot of time in the trenches of people's businesses, their online programs, their sort of digital products, all the different things. So I thought today I would do something um, for you all, which is to give you kind of the top tips from an experienced designer in terms of like, here's what you look for in your learning experiences, your programs, your whatever you want to call them, courses, coaching programs, memberships, whatever else. So when you're designing an experience, there are a couple of sort of rules of the road that will help you as you are really looking at like how do you structure what you're doing? How do you not get yourself into a position again where I have a lot of clients is they've built something and it's great, but it's sort of put together with duct tape and paper clips and it's a little chaotic because everything isn't aligned. And so it's you know they're creating more videos because they love to create videos and love to create the content and really want to serve their customers, but they don't understand that what they're doing is actually just confusing their customers because there's too many things in there that don't actually create a journey. So, all right, let's dive in. All right, top tip number one is to start with end in mind. And this is one of my favorites because everyone says, oh, yes, yes, of course, I know how to do this. But I can't tell you how many times I don't actually see this happen in some sort of productized service or product, which is you're starting with a specific problem and you're bringing your customer to a specific result, right? Like there's a solution that they're looking for to solve that problem. So they have a problem and they are looking for a solution to that problem. Your, whatever you're providing to them, a coaching program, a course, a hybrid model, whatever it is the bridge between like the problem and the result that they are looking for. But you gotta have the bookends, right? Like there's got to be some sort of problem, there's got to be some reason why somebody wants to change or learn something new so that they can do something different. If you do not have a burning problem with the customer that you are working with, even if you're working with employees, then you're not actually going to get the results that you want because there's not an identified problem. On the flip side, if you don't have a result, then nobody's going to know if they got there, right? Like nobody's going to know if they got the result to the problem if there's not something that's tangible from an outcome perspective. So if you, for example, like the problem you're identifying is, well, I want to lose weight. How do you know what the result is, right? Like the result could be like you want to lose 1 pound or you want to lose 100 pounds. So be specific in terms of what that result is. When I work with corporations, the number one thing I hear around, well, what's the result that you're looking to achieve is, well, I'll know it when I see it. And the problem with that is if you don't even know what the result is, like if you're creating training for your customers or you're creating training for your employees, if you don't know what the result is, then your customers are never going to know what the result is because your solution is not actually going to get them there. And your goal is to create a solution, a training, a coaching program, whatever it is that you're creating to solve a particular problem. And if you're not giving them and not identifying the solution, then it's a longer road to get there. That's sort of a knowledge or understanding model, and that's not the model that we use in a workplace. Like colleges and schools can get away with that, but that's not what's happening in the workplace because we have to help people actually get a result. Nobody wants to just take training for training's sake. That's not, and if there is someone out there, great, but that's not the majority, and that's not actually going to serve anyone, especially your customers. Okay, tip number two is start with that 10,000 foot view, that big picture, and then go down to the details. So often I see people create videos and they're not connected back to the bigger picture. They're just, kind of videos that are inserted into different places around topics and not connecting it back to, again, that roadmap, right? Like that bridge, that solution has to be on that line somewhere. If it's not on the line, it's a topic, it's maybe a nice to have, but it's not something that they need in order to go from the problem they have to the result that they're looking for. So connect it back. And it keeps you honest, it keeps you moving down the path and not getting distracted, and it helps your customers stay on the path and not get distracted. And by the way, this is where your authority framework lives. So you've heard me talk a lot about building your authority model and your authority framework, where you're guiding people, on the exact path that they need to go from where they are today to where they want to go. That's where your authority framework fits in. And that's like, tell your people about what the steps are that they're going to be taking before they take them. Again, it doesn't need to be a mystery. Sometimes I think that we hold back on telling people what the big picture is because we're like, well, if they know what the path is, then they won't need us because they already have all the answers. And, turn that back to yourself. If you had a map, would you still want help to implement things on the map? Would you still want help figuring out how it all knits together? Yes, of course, because you don't know how to execute based on that map. But adults in particular like to see the big picture. They like to see that, like, oh, here is the full solution. This is what it looks like. There's no mystery. I go here and then I go here and then I go here. Great. I want support to be able to do that. And that's that 10,000-foot view. So always start every single step, every single module, every single interaction, every single session, whatever you're doing, with like, here's the big picture, here's where we are on the map. Okay, now let's get down into the weeds, and then continuously bring them back up so they stay on that path. It will make a huge difference for you and a huge difference for your customer. Okay, tip number 3 is think in activities, not topics. When you think in topics, what you're doing is just putting like a laundry list of kind of informational pieces together that help somebody potentially be able to do something with it. When you think of in terms of what's the action, what do they need to do to get to the result, then you're focused on that activity and what somebody needs to be able to, what they need to learn or whatever else in order for them to be able to take that step. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, what kind of belief or mindset do we need to get them out of in order to be able to execute on the step? What are the hurdles or obstacles that are coming up for them as they're trying to complete that step? That's much more impactful than just giving them topics and say, well, I'm going to help you learn this or understand this or gain knowledge in this so that you may be able to apply it sometime in the future. I don't really know when, but like sometime in the future, you may be able to apply that. It's just not helpful. What's helpful is to say, well, what does somebody need to do to get to that next step? What do they need to do to get to that result? Focus on that activity, build the activity first, and then build videos around that activity to help them be able to complete that activity. This is like the place in time where people tend to be like, well, but I have to give them all this background information for them to be able to do the activity. Maybe they need that to be able to complete the activity. Maybe it's just background that they don't need right now that you can leave off and then attach that additional information once they're ready to continue to move forward. So think about that. But this is the question you should be asking yourself as you're working through how do you put something together that will be a comprehensive experience for your people. All right, tip number 4, you're creating a journey for your customers. Again, this is where like a bunch of topics in a section or a module or a lesson or however you're organizing your stuff isn't actually helpful unless it stays on the path that somebody is trying to kind of keep walking down in order to get to the result. So the question to ask yourself here is, how will my customers go through your solution? Is it easy for them to go through it? Is it clear? Can they progress naturally and without friction? I was just looking at a client's kind of experience that they had created, and in pieces, it was amazing, right? They take a self-assessment, they get the results of the self-assessment, and it drives them directly to like, here are the here are the pieces that you can go through in order to kind of increase your score on the self-assessment. In theory, it's amazing, but the way that it was executed in the system was very confusing and difficult for people to be able to navigate through unless they were paying very close attention. The system would bring them to another video that was not connected to the path that was outlined for them. In order to find that path, you had to go back to kind of the beginning of the section, then dive in, and then go back. And that's just very kind of brain calorie heavy for your customer. So remember, they're already going through a lot of effort to learn and apply something new that they're not comfortable with and they don't have competency in. So if you put something on top of that that makes it even more complicated for them to navigate through, you're maxing them out. And so you want to make sure that when you are thinking about putting together your experience, you're thinking about how your customers are going through each step along the way and remove as much friction as possible in that process. Okay, and then tip number 5 is always one of my favorites, which is cut 80%. So often, whether it's you're kind of putting something together for the first time, or it's something that has been there and you just keep sort of adding new material to it, what happens again is it becomes more complicated for that person, and it takes them from a fast path to a long and windy, confusing path. So the question that you always want to be asking yourself is, what's the fastest path to success, right? How do I get them to apply what I need them to apply in order for them to keep moving forward? That's just like, do it as fast as possible. Not how much do you want to share. This is where you as the expert and you as the guide comes into play, because your job is to guide them along their path. It's not to be the expert and show your expertise in this process. You've already done that by creating your authority strategy, your model, and your framework, and by creating all the material in a succinct manner. You don't need to keep showing up and proving your value, proving your expertise. What you need to do is actually use your expertise to simplify everything, because again, your customers, like, it's just chaos, right? Because they don't understand or know like what they should be doing or how they should be doing it or the path to take. So they've got all of this chaos happening. Your job is to come in, cut all the chaos, and just move them forward. The story I always use around this concept is, for those of you who are skiers out there, downhill skiers, I always use the example of, you are skiing for the very first time and you have 2 instructors and you're on the chairlift going up the mountain and you're looking down and it's getting steeper and steeper and steeper. And you have one instructor on one side that's telling you all about the history of skiing and how skis are made and how they're waxed and all the ski resorts in the US and Canada and Europe and all of the things. He's just talking your ear off about all of the things skiing. And then the other instructor who's next to you is like, you know what? Here's what you need to remember. You need to know how to start and how to stop. Otherwise, you're just going to follow me down the mountain, and I am going to help you navigate down the mountain in, I'm going to help you not go over moguls. I'm going to help you not go over, knock into a tree or whatever else, right? So I'm going to help you get down the mountain. What I need you to know is pizza and French fries. And pizza is how you stop, and French fries is how you go. And if you can remember those two things and follow me as I take you down the mountain, you'll be all set. Now, I don't know about you, but at the top of the mountain, if I'm looking down at a steep mountain, who is it that I want to follow? Do I want to follow the person who's giving me all the details and all the history and all of the things? Or do I want to follow the person who is saying, just do these two essential pieces, and then we're gonna kind of go down together, and I'm going to show you where all the obstacles are and help you avoid those as you are going down the hill. And then when we're down having a beer in the chalet, I'm going to tell you all of those awesome things because you're going to be ready to hear it and you're going to be excited about hearing it. But if I'm like, I don't care about any of the details around skiing and how skis are made and the resort. I don't care any about that. I am just looking down this mountain going, how in the heck can I get down here without dying? Right? And so your customers are in a similar position. How do I just get to where I need to go in the best way possible without, whatever that without is, right? Spending too much money, taking up too much time, having it not work or have it work or whatever the thing is, right? Like they're just not worried about like they don't need more than just getting it to work. So that is always where I start people, is once they see that they've gotten to that result in the fastest way possible, then they're going to be open to all of the things that you want to talk about. When you look at the curse of knowledge, like you're like at a 10, your customer is probably at like a 2 or a 3. And so when you like inundate them with all things like level 10, they're just not there yet. So that's my tip number 5 for you. I hope that this short training was helpful, just to give you some actionable tips of how you can really either like kind of audit what you have or look at what you're trying to create and ask yourself some essential questions that will help you become more successful. All right, there you go.